The hard part was over. The harder part was just beginning. Hello and welcome to Random History. It's codename Hannibal here, ready to continue the story of the Rio da Duvida, the River of Doubt. Candido Rondon had a motto for how to deal with hostile natives. Die if you must, but never kill. During one of his adventures with the telegraph company, he had been ambushed by warriors from the Nambakwara tribe. Despite being wounded, he told his men not to fight back. Later, he lured members of the Nambakwara tribe out by playing music and then befriended them. But that was with the Nambakwara. They, at least, had some contact with the outer world and could be easily negotiated with. But along the River of Doubt, there were more tribes who had never seen anyone outside their community. Negotiating with them would be nearly impossible, and they were known as one of the most violent tribes living in the Amazon. They were the Cinta Larga. But the explorers would have to pass many other dangers before they even got to the Cinta Larga. Even the jaguar and the cayman, despite their ferocious reputation, had been scoffed at by Rondon compared to other dangers. Again and again, he had seen comrades killed or driven mad by the bugs. Even though the world's first bug repellent had just been invented, the explorers found it was practically useless against all the insects of the Amazon. And the River of Doubt itself was infested by piranhas and other ferocious fish. And yet many of the expedition members still bathed in the waters. Rondon reported that the 220-pound Roosevelt looked like some kind of great fat fish while swimming. On the 1st of March, the canoes floated into the middle of an abandoned native village. This was, at last, proof that potentially hostile tribes lived along the River of Doubt. Rondon believed the village had belonged to a subgroup of the Nambakwara called, and excuse my pronunciation, the Navaite. Now, with the unnerving knowledge that they were not alone, the expedition continued along the Rio da Duvida. That night, the expedition set up camp without thoroughly searching the area. They accidentally chose a spot right on top of where a coral snake was resting. When the snake revealed itself, a camarada succeeded in chasing it away, but only in the direction of Roosevelt. According to Cherry, Roosevelt did a much livelier dance in attempting to set his foot on the snake than when he danced the hornpipe on the shipboard. However, Roosevelt missed the snake's head and was saved from the creature's bite only by his thick boots. After days of sailing down a peaceful river, the expedition members were shocked when they turned a bend and found rapids ahead of them. At one point, the waters got so narrow that George Cherry could bridge the gap with his rifle. They had no choice but to carve out a path through the forest and to take the grueling overland route that wasted time and rations, and it damaged Roosevelt's canoe. This pattern would continue for quite some time. The explorers would see rapids up ahead, travel through the jungle to avoid them, and then, once they got back on the river, they would sail for a few hours and then see rapids again. The overland journeys took days. The members of the expedition began to seriously worry about losing their provisions before they got to the river's end. Making it even worse was the fact that they did not know where the river's end was. There were 4 popular possibilities. They were, number 1, it led to the river that Leo Miller was now sailing down. Number 2, it led to the river that Roosevelt and Father Sam had originally planned to sail down. Number 3, it led to a tributary of the Amazon. And number 4, it that led to the Amazon itself. One night, before setting up camp, the explorers took the food out of the boats and pulled them up onto the shore. It proved to be a wise move. During the night, Roosevelt's still a bit leaky canoe began taking on water. Not only did it sink, but it pulled the boat that it was attached to down with it. The two were carried downstream by the current and smashed against the rocks. The expedition members could not carry all their provisions in the remaining canoes. They were now stranded along the banks of the River of Doubt. When they took stock of rations, they realized that if their estimates were correct, for the last month of the journey, they would be without food. With this in mind, the camaradas worked as fast as they could to build a new canoe. In 4 days, it was done. During their work, Roosevelt complimented all of them on how hard they could labor. All except for one. His name was Julio de Lima. He had been chosen to join the expedition because of his strength and energy, but his strength was only used when he was being threatened, and his energy had vanished. Even Rondon wanted to send him back, but they were much too far into the expedition for that to be possible. Despite Julio's laziness, the rest of the camaradas were skilled enough to finish more canoes quickly. After 4 days, the expedition was able to once again set off on the River of Doubt. They made surprising progress on the first day after that, but on the next, they encountered more rapids and were forced to slow down. But this slowdown was nothing compared to what was to come. The day after that, Kermit and 2 camaradas went ahead in a boat to scout out the river. They made it safely to an island and saw rapids ahead. But when they tried to go back and warn the rest of the group, they were caught in a whirlpool. The canoe was quickly capsized. Kermit and the camaradas hung on for dear life. At last, Kermit washed up on the shore, where he found Rondon waiting for him. The first thing that the expedition's leader said was, "You have had a fine bath." But as the expedition took stock, they found that they had lost more than a canoe and supplies. One of the camaradas, Simplicio, was missing. They searched the river for hours. They never found a body. The expedition had no choice but to continue on, with the death toll now 1. One among humans, of course. Of the animals that had been companions of the expedition members, almost all were already dead, and another was about to join them. One day, while hunting, Rondon heard the howl of one of his dogs. When he ran to investigate, he saw that dog had been shot with the long poisoned arrows of the Cinta Larga. The attack was tragic to the dog-loving Rondon, but spooky to the rest of the expedition. They now knew that not only were their native tribes out there, but that they were stalking them. Though the expedition members did not know it, the fact that everything in the Cinta Larga tribes had to be voted on was likely the only reason that the explorers were still alive. And though the majority of Cinta Larga eventually decided not to harm the foreigners, there were more problems down the road. Or rather, down the river. Theodore Roosevelt grew ill, and then scraped his leg badly on a sharp rock. In addition, food began to vanish. But now it was only too obvious who was at fault. Everyone in the expedition had grown thinner, except for one, Julio de Lima. A man was placed to guard him, but Julio murdered the man and then fled into the forest. Rondon wanted to track down Julio and bring him to proper Brazilian justice, but there was no time, so the expedition moved on. Several days later, A tired and starving man walked out of the trees. It was Giulio. He begged the expedition to forgive him and to let him go with them to the journey's end. During his days in the Wild West, Theodore was known to escort criminals down rivers to bring them to justice instead of leaving them to die in the wilderness. But now, the boats kept sailing, and Giulio was left behind. Body count 3. Next up on Random History, Theodore's condition, and that of the expedition, worsens. I hope you enjoyed this video. Sorry that I had to use a couple of different microphones, and please consider subscribing. And I'll see you soon with episode 3 of Random History, the Rio da Vida.